On this week's episode of Randy's Revelations, we dig deep into the hearts of two very troubled spouses. Xenot and her husband started their marriage so innocently, but things started to take a turn when Xenot began seeing seductive fairy temptresses dancing in the camphorwood trees. She believed they were real, but knew that no one else would believe her. They completely controlled her life, and when she didn't go to see them on one occasion, they got angry. She became obsessed, and as her husband would describe, distracted from the real world. However, she felt a sense of happiness and pleasure when she was with the fairies. They seemed to give her life meaning and purpose. Xenot goes to see them one day, and eventually she reaches a climax of, happiness, and passes out. She awakes to her husband, who is furious. He drags her out by her hair, screaming and cursing at her. He abuses her. From that day forward, the fairies were no more. Xenot then became a hollow shell of herself. Her and her husband have a son less than a year later, but in a tragic car accident, the husband becomes crippled and their son dies. Allegedly, the husband may have been inebriated, but he will deny it. Xenot resents her husband, yet she still takes care of him. The only happiness either of them had left was from a mutual friend, Enam. She was able to make Xenot smile and laugh again, as well as keep the husband company and provide friendship.
Okay. Alright. Simmer down. Alright. Okay, and as always, I'm your host, Randy. It's going to be an interesting episode of Randy's Revelations, so let's go ahead and meet our guests.
Xenot is an oppressed Egyptian woman. She enjoys not talking to her husband and having picnics in the park. The husband is a grumpy old cripple who enjoys doing nothing and being grumpy.
Alright, you two, we have a lot to talk about today. Let's start out with how it was to be an Egyptian woman in the time of this incident.
Well, you know, Randy, it was pretty tough. You were basically your husband's property, and I just really couldn't express myself for who I really was.
I see. So if it was so terrible, then why stay with him all that time, even after the accident?
Well, like I said, I really didn't have a voice. I was basically his property, so I really just couldn't express myself or my femininity like I want to.
And you husband bro, why were you always leaving the house and not wanting to be with your wife?
In a society where the man is supposed to control everything, my wife didn't really need me, and I tried everything to get her to want to be around me. I even moved out in the middle of nowhere, and it didn't work.
So basically, you didn't think women should be self-sufficient at all?
No, I didn't.
Interesting. Also, why did you keep that van that your son died in? You knew Xenot didn't want it.
I thought I could use it to my advantage, but it eventually came to remind me of my son.
I see. Xenot, I'd like to move on to your relationship with the fairies. What did they actually mean to you?
Well, they were basically my life's desire at one point. I began and I was afraid of them because it was just something so different, but they began to be my entire life, and eventually I figured out that they cured my disease along with the camphorwood trees. So I think that's why I kept wanting to go back there, because then I could finally express myself like I couldn't do with my husband.
So I know you don't know why you ended up naked in the woods, but I want to hear from your husband. Why did you react the way you did?
Well, when I saw her, I thought the ferryman did it, so I had to just beat her with my cane. So she knew my absolute authority was known.
I'd like to point out that your wife was actually suffering from a disease, and the camphorwood suppressed it a little bit. So basically, you're just a pretty bad hombre. Moving on. Throughout all these problems, you guys had a mutual friend who kind of kept you guys happy. Can you tell me about Enam?
Well, I think she would come over, and then we could finally just express who we really wanted to be. Like, I could be myself and he could be himself.
And you, husband?
She was the only person who would visit me during my illness. She was the only person I could talk to since my wife wouldn't talk to me anymore. And she was the only one who kept us together.
See, I'm glad she could help you guys stay together. And you'll have plenty of time to work on your relationship. But that's all the time we have for today. On next week's episode, we'll figure out who the father is, Daquan or Daquisha.